In the grand halls of the Galactic Council headquarters, representatives from a myriad of advanced spacefaring species gathered to discuss matters of cosmic importance. The Council had long maintained order and stability across the known universe, mediating disputes and promoting cooperation between its diverse member races. As the Council session began, a heated debate erupted over a peculiar new species that had recently achieved faster-than-light travel and made contact with the wider galactic community, humans. "These humans are a curious breed," remarked Councillor Zorax of the Krellian Empire, his tentacles waving dismissively. "Physically unimpressive, with no natural weapons or defenses to speak of, and their technology is laughably primitive compared to our own." "Agreed," chimed in Councillor Thaxos of the Zigerian Confederacy, her feline eyes narrowing. "They have only just mastered basic FTL travel, centuries behind most civilized races. I see no reason to consider them a threat or even a potential asset." The councillors reviewed what little information they had gleaned about human civilization from remote observation. Reports painted a picture of a fractious and warlike species, constantly in conflict with themselves over trivial differences. Yet this same fractious nature had apparently driven humans to achieve extraordinary leaps in technology and expansion despite their many disadvantages. "Their history of war and strife is concerning," noted Councillor Vorzak of the Eldari Dominion. "But we must also recognize that these same pressures have forged them into an adaptable and ingenious species. They bear watching." The Council continued to argue back and forth, some dismissive of the upstart humans, while others expressed cautious interest in their potential. Ultimately, the prevailing view was that these newcomers were a novelty at best, a brief amusement for the older and wiser races of the galaxy. "Very well," said High Councillor Zahn, gaveling the session to a close. "We shall make contact with these humans and grant them probationary status within the galactic community. But let us not overestimate their importance. In the grand scheme of the cosmos, they are but a mote of dust, a punchline to the universe's grandest joke." The councillors dispersed, some chuckling at the absurdity of these hairless apes blundering their way into the stars. Little did they realize that the joke would soon be on them, as the tenacious and unpredictable humans prepared to make their mark on an unsuspecting galaxy. A hush fell over the Galactic Council chamber as the delegation of human ambassadors entered, escorted by an honor guard of Councilia sentinels. The humans appeared small and fragile next to the towering armored insectoids, their soft bodies and delicate features marking them as out of place in this gathering of ancient and powerful races. Ambassador Ilara Sahin, a petite woman with bronze skin and fiery red hair, stepped forward to address the assembled councillors. Despite her diminutive stature, her bearing was proud, and her voice projected an unshakable confidence. "Greetings, esteemed members of the Galactic Council," she began, her words translated into 1,000 alien tongues by the neural implants of the councillors. "I am Ambassador Ilara Sahin of the Terran Republic. On behalf of humanity, I thank you for this opportunity to join your august body and take our place among the stars." The assembled aliens murmured and chittered, some amused, others disdainful. To many councillors, Sahin's speech sounded naive and grandiose, the overeager words of a child play-acting at diplomacy. High Councillor Zahn fixed Sahin with a condescending smile. "Welcome, Ambassador. We are pleased to accept humanity as a probationary member of this council. However, you must understand that earning a permanent place in our ranks will require your species to prove its worth and maturity. There is much you have yet to learn about the workings of the galaxy." Sahin's eyes flashed with an inner fire, but her diplomatic training held her tongue in check. "Of course, High Councillor, we humans are eager to learn and grow. But I assure you, we have much to offer in return. Our history has taught us the value of determination, adaptability, and unity in the face of adversity." The councillors exchanged looks of amusement at the humans' bold claims. Unity? From a species that had nearly destroyed itself in countless wars and conflicts. The notion was laughable. Councillor Zorax could not contain a gurgling chuckle. Ambassador, your species has barely left its own star system. You have yet to face true adversity on a galactic scale. What could you possibly offer us that we do not already possess in abundance? Sahin met the Krellian's gaze unflinchingly. Perspective, Councillor. The fresh perspective of a species that has clawed its way up from the mud, learning and growing with each challenge we overcome. We may be young compared to your ancient civilizations, but our potential is limitless. The human delegation took their seats, surrounded by the barely concealed derision of the watching aliens. Yet Sahin and her colleagues held their heads high, determined to prove the worth of their species. As the council moved on to other matters, the humans listened intently to the proceedings, soaking up every scrap of knowledge about the workings of this strange new universe they found themselves in. They did not yet know that their greatest challenge was lurking just beyond the horizon, a crucible that would forge humanity into the heroes they were destined to become. The first sign of the impending disaster came in the form of a series of frantic distress calls from the outer rim of Council space. The messages were garbled and fragmentary, but the few images that did come through showed scenes of unimaginable devastation. Once proud cities reduced to rubble, alien corpses littering the streets, and vast armadas of unknown warships darkening the skies. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to address the crisis, but even as they debated and argued, more worlds fell silent, their communications abruptly cut off. It soon became clear that the Council faced an adversary unlike any they had encountered before, the Vashari, a race of ruthless conquerors from beyond the charted stars. The Vashari ships were massive and angular, bristling with advanced weapons that made a mockery of the Council's defenses. Their soldiers were genetically engineered killing machines, their bodies augmented with cybernetic enhancements that granted them superhuman strength and speed. Worst of all, the Vashari seemed to possess an innate resistance to the psychic abilities that many Council races relied upon in battle, rendering them all but immune to the most potent weapons in the Council's arsenal. As the Vashari fleets swept inexorably toward the heart of Council space, the Councillors struggled to mount an effective defense. The Krellians and Zagerians, once dismissive of the human warnings about the dangers of complacency, now found themselves woefully unprepared for the onslaught. The Eldari, for all their vaunted wisdom and foresight, seemed paralyzed by indecision in the face of an enemy that defied their every prediction. In desperation, the Council turned to the only species that had consistently advocated for a more proactive approach to defense, the humans. Ambassador Sahin and her colleagues were called before the Council once more, this time to share what meager intelligence they had gathered on the Vashari threat. The Vashari are unlike any foe we have faced before, Sahin warned, her voice grave. They are not mere conquerors, but exterminators. They seek nothing less than the total annihilation of all other sentient life in the galaxy. The councillors looked to one another in growing horror as the full scope of the threat became clear. The Vashari would not be satisfied with mere conquest. They intended to wipe the galaxy clean of all other species, leaving only themselves as the sole inheritors of the cosmos. But there is still hope, Sohin continued, her eyes blazing with determination. Humanity stands ready to join the fight against this menace. We may be few in number compared to the council races, but we have faced extinction before and emerged stronger for it. We will not stand idly by while the Vashari threaten the very fabric of galactic civilization. There was a moment of stunned silence as the weight of Sahin's words sank in. Then, slowly at first, but with growing momentum, the councillors began to nod in agreement. The humans, once scorned as upstarts and primitives, now represented the best hope for the survival of the council and all its member races. As the Vashari armadas drew ever closer, the council races girded themselves for the fight of their lives, and at the vanguard of this desperate struggle stood the humans, ready to prove their worth and stand tall among the stars. As the Vashari invasion spread like a plague across the galaxy, consuming world after world, the Galactic Council struggled to mount an effective defense. The ancient and powerful races that had long dominated the stars found themselves outmatched and outmaneuvered at every turn, their once invincible fleets shattered by the relentless Vashari onslaught. But amidst the chaos and despair, a new force emerged to challenge the Vashari juggernaut, the humans of the Terran Republic. Though few in number and lacking the advanced technologies of the Council races, the humans possessed a unique set of skills and qualities that would prove invaluable in the fight for survival. Leading the charge was Admiral Alexei Ivanov, a grizzled veteran of countless battles against the Terran Republic's own enemies. Ivanov had long advocated for a more proactive approach to defense, arguing that the best way to ensure peace was to prepare for war. Now, as the Vashari threat loomed over the galaxy, his words proved prophetic. Under Ivanov's command, the human fleet launched a series of daring raids against Vashari supply lines and staging areas, using their smaller, more maneuverable ships to strike with surgical precision. The humans employed unconventional tactics that caught the Vashari off guard, such as using asteroid fields and nebulae to mask their approach, or baiting the enemy into ambushes by feigning retreat. At first, the Council races were skeptical of the human efforts, seeing them as little more than pinpricks against the vast bulk of the Vashari war machine. But as the raids continued and the Vashari began to suffer significant losses, the attitude began to shift. The humans were proving that the invaders were not invincible, but they could be beaten with cunning and courage. Emboldened by the human successes, the Council races rallied to the cause. The Krellians, masters of bioengineering, began to develop new strains of viruses and bacteria that could target the Vashari's cybernetic enhancements. The Zagerians, renowned for their stealth technology, launched their own campaigns of sabotage and espionage behind enemy lines. And the Eldari, with their vast knowledge of the cosmic web, worked to disrupt the Vashari's communications and navigation systems. Together, the Human Council Alliance began to turn the tide of the war. In a series of spectacular victories, they retook key systems and worlds that had fallen to the Vashari, driving the invaders back and shattering their aura of invincibility. For the first time since the invasion began, hope began to flicker among the beleaguered defenders of the galaxy. But the Vashari would not be so easily defeated. As their losses mounted, they unleashed ever more terrible weapons and strategies, determined to crush the resistance at any cost. The war entered a new and even more brutal phase as the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Through it all, the humans remained at the forefront of the fight, their tenacity and adaptability proving a constant thorn in the Vashari's side. And as the final battle loomed on the horizon, all eyes turned to Admiral Ivanov and his intrepid fleet, knowing that the future of the galaxy would be decided by the courage and skill of these unlikely heroes. The Vashari fleet hung in the void like a swarm of angry hornets, their ships bristling with weapons and pulsing with malevolent energy. At the center of the formation loomed the massive flagship of the Vashari Emperor, a monstrous vessel that dwarfed even the largest of the Council's battleships. Arrayed against this formidable force was the ragtag alliance of humans and Council races, their ships battered and scarred from countless battles, but still proudly flying the colors of their united resistance. At the vanguard of the fleet was the human flagship, the TRS Indomitable, with Admiral Alexei Ivanov at its helm. As the two fleets faced off across the gulf of space, a tense silence fell over the battlefield. Both sides knew that this would be the decisive engagement, the one that would determine the fate of the galaxy for generations to come. Aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Ivanov stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces grim but determined. "This is it," Ivanov said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Everything we've fought for, everything we've sacrificed, it all comes down to this. The Vashari think they can break us, that they can crush our spirit and our will to fight. But they're wrong. We will stand tall, we will stand together, and we will show them the true strength of the human spirit." A cheer went up from the crew, echoed across the fleet as Ivanov's words were broadcast to every ship. In that moment, The disparate races of the Council, Krelian, Sogerian, Eldari, and dozens more, stood as one with their human allies, united in their determination to defend their homes and their way of life. As if in response to Ivanov's declaration, the Vashari fleet surged forward, their weapons lighting up the void with searing beams of energy. The Council ships responded in kind, and soon the battlefield was a maelstrom of fire and destruction. The fighting was brutal and unrelenting, with both sides taking heavy losses. The Vashari's superior technology and numbers gave them a significant advantage, but the Council's ships fought with a desperate ferocity, their crews driven by the knowledge that failure meant extinction. At the heart of the battle, the Indomitable and the Vashari flagship dueled like ancient gods, their shields flaring and weapons blazing as they poured fire into each other's hulls. Ivanov gritted his teeth as his ship shuddered under the onslaught, but he refused to yield. "Hold the line," he shouted over the din of battle. "No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice, we hold the line." And hold it they did. Though the Council ships fell by the dozens, they fought on with unwavering courage, buying time for the Indomitable to press its attack. And with a final titanic salvo, the human flagship broke through the Vashari shields and unleashed a devastating broadside into the enemy vessel's heart. The Vashari flagship exploded in a blinding flash of light, and a cheer went up from the Council fleet as the rest of the enemy ships began to falter and retreat. Against all odds, against an enemy that had seemed invincible, the Human Council alliance had emerged victorious. But the cost had been high. As Ivanov surveyed the battlefield, he saw the wreckage of countless ships, the bodies of brave soldiers floating in the void. The galaxy had been saved, but the price had been steep. And yet, as the survivors gathered to tend to their wounds and mourn their fallen comrades, there was a sense of hope and pride that could not be extinguished. The humans, once dismissed as primitives and upstarts, had proven their worth beyond measure. And the Council races, for all their ancient power and wisdom, had learned the value of unity and cooperation in the face of a common foe. The war was over, but the story of the galaxy was just beginning. And as the Allies looked to the future, they knew that they would face whatever challenges lay ahead as one, united by the bonds of fellowship and the unbreakable spirit of the human race. In the aftermath of the Vashari War, the galaxy lay in ruins. Countless worlds had been devastated, entire civilizations wiped out or scattered to the winds. The once mighty races of the Galactic Council, humbled by their brush with extinction, now faced the daunting task of rebuilding and recovery. But amidst the rubble and the grief, there was also a sense of hope and possibility. The war had forced the disparate races of the galaxy to put aside their differences and work together in the face of a common threat. And in doing so, they had forged bonds of friendship and mutual respect that would endure long after the last battle had been fought. At the forefront of this new era of cooperation were the humans. Their bravery and sacrifice in the war had earned them the admiration and gratitude of the Council races, who now saw them not as primitives or upstarts, but as true equals. In a ceremony held on the newly rebuilt Council headquarters, Ambassador Elara Sahin and Admiral Alexei Ivanov were honored for their leadership and valor. As they stood before the assembled dignitaries, Sahin spoke of the lessons learned from the war. "The Vashari sought to divide us, to turn us against each other in our darkest hour," she said. "But in doing so, they underestimated the power of unity and the strength of the bonds that tie us together. We are many races, many cultures, many ways of life, but we are one galaxy, one community, one future." Her words were met with thunderous applause, and as the ceremony concluded, the human delegation took their place among the Council races as full and equal members. In the years that followed, the humans played a vital role in the rebuilding and revitalization of the galaxy. Their ingenuity and adaptability, honed through centuries of overcoming adversity on their own world, proved invaluable in tackling the challenges of restoration and renewal. Human scientists worked alongside their alien counterparts to develop new technologies and innovations that would help heal the wounds of war. Human diplomats and mediators helped to broker peace deals and alliances between once hostile races, fostering a new spirit of cooperation and understanding. And through it all, the humans remained true to the ideals and values that had brought them to the stars in the first place. They were explorers and adventurers, dreamers and visionaries, always seeking new horizons and new frontiers to conquer. As the galaxy entered a new golden age of peace and prosperity, the humans took their place among the most respected and influential races in the cosmos. No longer the punchline of the universe, they had become its greatest champions and its brightest hope. But even as they basked in the glow of their newfound status, the humans never forgot the lessons of the Vashari War. They knew that the price of peace was eternal vigilance, and that the greatest threats to the galaxy's future might come not from without, but from within. And so they watched and waited, ready to stand tall once more in defense of the ideals and the way of life they had fought so hard to preserve. For the humans knew, better than anyone, that the true measure of a species was not in its technology or its power, but in its courage, its compassion, and its unbreakable spirit. The end.